I think our prediction was right. No, I don't think our prediction is right. I know it was right. We pretty much said it. We knew the James Harden situation was going to end up like this. So very similar to Damian Lillard. We know he has a desired destination. James Harden opts into the contract with Philly just to get traded. And there's been no movement on any trade talks. And finally, earlier this week, Daryl Morey pretty much says, expect James Harden to come to training camp. And now we're in this situation where it looks like James Harden's going to go the Ben Simmons route, or even that 2021 James Harden route when he was in Houston, where he's like, no, I'm not playing for you guys. Right. That's how things are looking. And this is exactly how he predicted it was going to end up. And we're seeing it right now. Now, under that new CBA, James Harden may not be able to do the things that we saw Ben Simmons do. As a matter of fact, that new CBA is cutting that out because of what Ben Simmons did. But we saw us coming, that we knew it was going to be a situation where Harden was not going to get traded to the team he wants to go to. And he's going to be sitting on this team he clearly doesn't want to be on after calling Daryl Morey a liar, especially through the training camp period. And we're just at a stagnation right now. We knew it was going to come. I think we kind of knew maybe like about 3 weeks after that free agency period where everybody kind of, signed or re-signed and made those deals happen. We kind of knew this thing may go on till about August or whatever the case may be. If they didn't make a move now, they're not going to make it for a minute, similar to Dame.
Yeah, it just comes from a place with me. I don't know about you all, but it's just like, is James Harden going to kind of beg or cry his way out of 3 organizations?
Yeah, bro. And like
okay, but with the Nets, like with the Nets, we were kind of like, okay, they weren't the greatest like organized team, whatever the case may be, but still at the end of the day, you did cry your way out of that situation. With the Rockets, that was probably the worst one out of all of them, because you just literally ate your way out of playing shape and just didn't want to play on the team. And sometimes it did look like he was wearing the fat suit. I'm be honest, because like the next game he would play, he would look skinny. I wouldn't put it past him, but he was showing up late to practice, and it was just very unprofessional. And then the things now with, you have a former MVP on your team that just won the MVP last season, and now you want to leave that, even though you want to call Daryl Morey a liar, and I get that, and a lot of owners lie, but it's just like the idea of you crying your way out of 3 teams while you're still under contract is never a good look. Never. Especially let me add this, especially when you play bad in the playoffs. That's even worse.
I think at this point, I don't even think there's a market for him, because I know earlier, I think like earlier, a couple of days after he requested trade, they got to looking at trades, and then a couple of weeks ago, I know they came out and said that they were going to shut it down and bring him back because they couldn't find anything, because nobody trusts him. You do this literally 3 times in a span of 4 or 5 years, and it's like 2 of the teams you had were almost finals. This team is kind of a finals contender, but the last one with Brooklyn, that was a bona fide finals contender, and for some reason you choose to force your way out of it. I know Carl has said this a couple weeks ago. After a while, people are going to start looking at you and ask you, like, why do you keep trying to do this? Why do you keep trying to cry and eat your way out of being on these teams?
It's weird, and you guys talked about it. I think that's the biggest thing right now about Harden. Blake, you just mentioned it, is him under or overestimating his value, right? That's what it comes down to. We've talked about it a million times. It's due to a bunch of different things. For one, it's the on the court stuff. It's tough to believe in a guy who's consistently over the course of the last decade, pretty much, is known as being elite regular season, but having way too many meltdown moments in the playoffs. And I think this season showed it. If it ain't going to happen now, I don't think it's ever going to happen. And by that, I mean James Harden being a number 1 or a number 2 option on like a championship level team. I just read a stat that was crazy to me that I didn't know about. James Harden averaged 15 freaking points on 30% shooting from 2 and 30% shooting from 3 pretty much in, a 9-game span outside of the 2 dominant games he had in that Celtics series. So let's think about that. Is that, and then there's the off the court stuff, like you guys mentioned, where it's like you've been in a million different situations, all of which have been great situations, and you forced your way out. Another one we forget about, he low-key forced his way out of OKC. He low-key did it. He turned down money in an extension, and I get it at that time. Maybe he felt he can get more, and he felt like he can be a number 1 option on the team. I don't really look at that one to the extent I look at the one with, Brooklyn and obviously Philly here. But, He did it back in Oklahoma City. We saw him do it here when he was back in Houston. After they tried to try something different around him. And it may be the Daryl Morey situation, it may be the ownership, but at the exact same time, you took that pay cut last year. When we heard the Daryl Morey news about him saying Daryl Morey is a liar and all of that, we did. In my mind, I was like, okay, I forgot these dudes don't fucking like each other. But at the exact same time, you took that pay cut, right, to help them sign PJ Tucker and Daniel House to kind of fill that roster out a little bit more. You tried to show that you were present for there. And then once again, we're in this really strange situation. The whole James Harden saga is weird, not just because of what he does on the court and the consistent trade demands, but also the way he's played himself with these contracts. He's turned down a lot of money. And then he's turned down a lot of money. He turned down a Nets extension offer they had for him.
Oh yeah.
He gave us
just for no reason.
He gave us 15 mil this offseason. So it's just consistently, it's so much weird stuff for a guy who really has transcendent talent. And it's just on all cylinders, things have went bad for James Harden. On the court, off the court, contract, all of this stuff, things have just went bad for him.
I would probably say the only good thing out of all this over the last, 5 or 6 years that's going good for James Harden, because you count the Rockets in with it, is that surprisingly every team that he's requested a trade from, they grant him to go to the team that he wants to. I don't know why, but I would like if I would have to trade James Harden, I would not let him go to the team he wants to go to, and especially if he behaves like he might act with the team or whatever, or if he doesn't come to practice or he starts acting unprofessional, and then added in that he has bad playoff games more than he should at that level of player at a former MVP. Like you should not be having those type of games. And then why would I grant you that trade to the team you want to go to? I don't get that first of all. Like how he's clearly not going to get that, but I don't know how he got this far. Like he got traded to the Nets, that he got lucky as hell with that. Then he got traded to the 76ers with the dude that won the MVP the following year. And it's just like, damn, how lucky can you keep getting? I think like you said, Ty, this is his last straw with that shit.
Yeah, there were two that literally this whole when I'm seeing two teams in trade negotiations for about a month, I know ain't shit finna happen, especially if it's revolving around one player. So we knew that Clippers thing wasn't gonna happen, similar to the Dame Heat thing. That shit ain't gonna happen, So the Clippers pretty much, it looks like they closed the door on that. Then there was the Rockets thing. He thought he was gonna end up, going to Houston and then picking up that option, after that second year, whatever the case may be, or after that contract's up, re-signing an extension with the Rockets, and they're pretty much like, no, we're Ime Udoka publicly says we're not doing that, right? So two teams, two destinations you want to be on look like they've closed the door on them. So that whole thing where you're like, oh, let me go to the team I want to go to, or whatever the case may be, that shit's over with. It's not happening.
Granted, Philadelphia did want a boatload back for him. And I think they wanted like a young player, a proven star, and a bunch of first round picks. Ain't nobody giving that for James Harden.
They think it's 2017.
Yeah,
it's 2023.
And Daryl Morey's philosophy on it is essentially, we're not going to make a move until we find something that's like it. But I like it in a way. I respect it from a business perspective, because Daryl Morey's pretty much like, I'm not about to get strong armed to sending you wherever and just picking up whatever I can get back. Like we've seen a couple of teams do that with Harden, where they just gave him up and got whatever the hell they could back, and then they end up with this weird mix.
I would say I don't know how much the things that Daryl Morey does, especially in his 76ers tenure, that makes sense, because I remember hearing like Tyrese Maxey trade rumors, like why? Yeah. Because they wouldn't extend him. Like, why wouldn't you not extend that dude? He showed that he's going to be, and he can be a great player for your franchise, and maybe he could be a second or third option on any given night. You can really trust in him. So I was like, that's stupid as hell. So I don't know how much I really trust Daryl Morey. I'm being honest. Yeah,
it's a match made in hell, right? I mean, you got iffy. Let's talk about Daryl Morey.
He about suspect as they come.
He's about it. Did you hear that? I don't want to get into it, but there's a lot of stuff about Daryl Morey where I'll be looking at this dude like, man, this dude's you know what I mean? Like he you heard the parking ticket story? Like he'll do some shit like double park and not pay the fine, and then instead of paying the fine, he'd sell the car and then demand that the dealer took the boot off. He's a dick. What? Yeah, he'll do stuff like that. But the biggest thing about Daryl Morey is there's a side to, like, you just have a GM and a player, and this mesh is horrible. It's just horrible. I've not been a fan of all the Daryl Morey basketball decisions. Blake, Carl, you mentioned it, the Tyrese Maxey extension and everything like that, and then playing games there. Like it's really iffy. And then it's just not a good match right now. And for Philly as a whole, it makes you really question, how is this whole thing going to end up? Is it like we can get outside of just Harden? Is there a way that this team actually gets over the hump? Like, let's just sit and think about this. This whole process thing there between Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, James Harden, as many talented players there have been since they've actually been a playoff team and actually been a solid team. They've gone through a lot, and then nothing has happened. So we can talk as much about Harden as we want to. With all of this going on, is there ever going to be a light at the end of the tunnel for the Sixers team at all? Are they ever going to maximize Joel Embiid?
Their time was last year.
The way it's looking now, this is about the second time they're going through this. No. And if I was Joel Embiid, I at this point, bro, I start getting frustrated because this is the second time. So this dude that I think third time because they had Jimmy Butler. This is what, the third time?
Yeah.
I've had a contending team, and now somebody wants to leave because they're not happy, and I'm just sitting here, and now we're just gonna do the whole thing.
But this would be different for Joel, and I understand. I get what you're saying. I kind of agree. This would be different for Joel if he didn't keep continuously getting away with having bad playoff games himself. Because he's had some clunkers.
He's had clunkers, but I will say this.
I
said I agree with you too, so it's just like
this dude, man, has had the worst second option situations out of anybody.
Is it him?
This looks like Jimmy Butler was out, Ben Simmons was gone, and now Harden's gonna be gone. And then, like Blake just said, I didn't think about it twice, like 2 times, really 3. But 2 times it ended up really fucking ugly where you had these 2 disgruntled guys going into training camp. Like, that's twice.
If he goes to training camp.
Oh, right. And then now, like I said, with that new CBA, if you keep playing games, he ain't going to be no free agent next year. So there's that whole thing. So he damn near got to be training.
And Doc Rivers, they coach.
I mean, God.
I forgot about that because I thought they fired Doc. See, I was playing around. Doc Rivers still on the team?
And Bruce Brown era. Not the Bruce Brown.
Brett Brown.
Brett Brown.
So you went through 3 different coaches. So 3 different systematic things. Now we'll see what this Nick Nurse thing brings to the table because I am interested in that. I've always liked Nick Nurse from an X's and O's standpoint as a coach. He mixes a lot of shit.
Yeah, that's who they hired. I knew they did fire. I was drawing the plan. I knew they did fire. Doc Rivers.
You can't say it's dumpster fire. It's about time.
It's getting to the point where Joel might request a trade. Like I wouldn't be shocked.
I would have been requested a trade if I was him.
And that's the fear with Philly fans, though, is that all of this going, that's it right there. What did we just say? We just said, is there anywhere there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel for the Sixers thing? Joel Embiid is looking at all of this like, yo, damn, this is my 3rd All-Star next to me. And then,
any reasonable person would say to themselves, if this keeps on happening, why would I stay here?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's just keep on happening. We're not winning.
Yeah.
It is.
Why are we doing this?
It is, but at least this is my problem with it. At least play good in the playoffs and say that. It looks bad when you have some clunk. Like he didn't play just as bad as Ben Simmons did in playoff games or James Harden. But we've all said Joel Embiid has gotten away with being mid in the playoffs a lot.
That is true.
Like people be looking at James Harden, people be looking at Ben Simmons, but I can go to a lot of the stats and see a lot of 5 for 20s for Joel Embiid, and he only has like barely 20 points, and a lot of those can be for free throws because he's a big man and gets to the free throw line. But I don't know. Him requesting trade would maybe rub me. I wouldn't feel as bad as I do about James Harden because James Harden is just like stop crying your way out of situations. But Joel, I mean, like, bro, at least the only thing I would say, at least you could have played a little better, maybe, and then requested. You played like you're some of the reasons like you've lost some of these playoff games. Let's be real. I'm not gonna.
I'll say this,
and he hasn't been healthy either. He's been a hurt player.
If I'm a guy who's an MVP and I've been in 2 MVP situations, right? I would have 0 questions about the stuff that's happened in Philly has been fucking awful. It's been awful. So much. So I wouldn't bat an eye at him demanding a trade. I don't care when it'll come. Joel Embiid, and Carl, you made a great point about him being mid in the playoffs. Joel Embiid has been able to get away with being mid in the playoffs because every offseason, the conversation with Philly is always some front office stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's always some controversy with the guy next to him. Right, like that. So those storylines are always going to outshine how iffy he is in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't good in that Boston series, especially in that elimination game. He just wet the bed. So, but immediately the number one the top conversation is what's going to happen with James Harden, because even during the season, that Rocket stuff was lingering. So Embiid's been able to get away with this stuff really because the controversy surrounding his second, his second option player around him is always going to outshine what he's doing or what he isn't doing in the postseason.
Yeah. Yeah, and we always thought that the rumors in the middle of the season were crazy. I guess they're not crazy now. Like we were like, James Harden wants to lead the 76ers while they're winning. Man, I guess now we should probably say, I'm not going to say trust all of the rumors that you hear, but don't completely throw them away. Like don't just forget about them, because a lot of them can end up being true.
Yeah. I'm definitely not going to discount as many of these like trade rumors as much as because there was a point in time right here, all of them, and I'd be like, man, this shit ain't gonna happen. But then some of them
end up being real.
Yes, because there was a point where I would discount every trade rumor that I come across, like every single one. Okay, guys, here's a question though. So what's going to end up having to happen is Harden's going to get traded. Question is where, right? I think the door is closed on this Clippers thing.
Shit, where else can you send them then?
I don't think
honestly, bro. Unless you
nowhere.
Yeah, he did talk about he want to go play in China.
He did say that. That was wild that he said that. So what if I was reading and I was looking at some things, and here's a team that could give Philly what they want. How would you guys feel about him going over to Toronto and pairing with Pascal Siakam? And maybe the Raptors include something around the grounds of OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr. and maybe a couple of other young guys. Would that be something that would be beneficial for both sides? I think it's okay enough for Philly. It'll push Tyrese Maxey into embracing that, a bigger role. And then now we're going to look at him like, oh yeah, you're the second guy on this team and we need you to put up damn near superstar level numbers for them to be a contender. And you have to be the second best player on a contending team. That's the situation puts them in. But if you bring back an OG Anunoby and a Gary Trent, those are really solid role players around Embiid and Maxey. And for Toronto, it makes them better than last year. It makes them better offensively, at least.
It does, but I don't like Siakam and James Harden pairing.
Yeah, disgusting.
I don't like it. I don't like it because Siakam's not good enough to be a number one anymore. Like he's not good enough. He's good enough to be a number 2 or maybe 3 probably. But James Harden, he's not. Yeah, probably most likely 3, especially on a good team. But James Harden, he obviously doesn't have the I don't know, the health or whatever, or the young age, if you want to say, to be a number 1 anymore. His number 1 days are over with. So that's why I don't like it, because like you said it though, they're just going to be a better team than they were last year. But just
but is it going to put him over the hump?
James Harden obviously wants to win, and it's just like that. Well, I don't care about him. He crying his way out. I'll send him anywhere. I'm be honest.
Yeah. It's all fun and games. Everything work out until he said he don't.
Everything will work out for the 76ers, but
what if I'm the Bucks? What if there's something centered around Chris Middleton and sending him over to Philly, and then? Because, like I said, the idea
they don't like each other. They don't like each other.
Yeah, that is true. There's that, but then again, there's idea where Philly's like, "Look, we'll send you out because we don't want you here, but we're still going to get something of value." That's the whole thing. Philly's whole thing is if we're going to send you somewhere, I don't care where it is. We know you want to go, so we'll send you somewhere else. But then we're going to get something of value back. Now, and I think Milwaukee would be open to having James Harden play with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you still got, I don't know if Brook Lopez will still be there, then it'll still be Drew Holiday. That puts Harden in a situation where he doesn't have to be a number 2 option. He can be a number 3.
Yeah. I like that. I like that way better than the Raptors. I actually like that idea. But James Harden still could cry his way out of it, so I don't really big baby when but I don't know. The Bucks is a good one. I was thinking New York, but they got Jalen Brunson and they don't really have the assets to really give him. I don't think.
New York, there are so many New York rumors right now outside of Jalen Brunson. I really don't think a lot of
they don't have nothing to give.
Yeah. What if we said, I see something that's saying the Jazz have a lot of assets to probably give a team like Philly. Right, it'll put Harden in a very weird situation, but
he go request a buyout type.
Yeah. It's rough. It's a really rough situation.
It's like putting a baby to sleep.
It's tough to figure out. It's tough to figure out. I think there are some that make sense, but like you said, Blake said it. The reluctancy for these other teams is, do we want?
I mean, I mean, honestly, this is an idea. Ty, you said if he breaks the CBA rule, he can't be a free agent next year, which means he might not be able to play or whatever the case may be. And it is some expansion teams coming in Las Vegas and other states. He might have to just wait.
Tell him take it.
I'm really thinking ahead because like I can see him holding out. He might not want to break that rule, and nobody wants him.
He said Harden should wait out until the expansion.
That's one hell of a sentence. I ain't gonna lie.
When does the expansion start? Because shit, that's not a bad idea.
A couple because if no team wants him, he's fucked.
I know a couple places you go if no team wants you. You got Argentina, you got China, you got Germany.
Yeah, he could be playing. He could be playing.
You got Italy, or you can go retire.
Or you can play for the USA team. That's the only basketball you get. But that's where he should have been playing. That would have been his only team playing on.
This is such a strange, like this is such a strange situation. I don't know how it's going to end up, but at the end of the day, here's my thing: is I'm not about to raise my eyebrow at any James Harden trade now. We named a couple of ideas, but like I said, the way things have been going for his career, we're not about to be like, oh, Harden so and so. Like we're not about to do that shit anymore. That's over with.
You mentioned when KD got traded to the Suns, you was like, man, this shit don't move me no more. That's
exactly
it. Just doesn't, because it gets to a point. I get you're unhappy at a place and this and that, but it's like, damn, everything not gonna be peaches and cream. You're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have bad moments with the GM. You're gonna have disagreements. What makes it worth it, especially if you're on a championship team, is you get through it. Not everything's supposed to be easy.